My name is Bennett Brown and I attend Oxford High School. I affirm this House believes that the borders of nation states should not prevent the movement of refugees. I have one sole definition. The United Nations Refugee Agency defines refugee as people fleeing from conflict or persecution. Interpretation on the burdens. The proposition has the burden of upholding the proposal that nations and sovereignties alike should not restrict the travel of those who are fleeing from conflict or persecution. The opposition has the burden of negating the proposal that nations should restrict travel by any and all means necessary of those who are fleeing from conflict or persecution. Contention 1. Borders are used as the acting force in horrible immigration policy. Historical analysis of immigration policy reveals that racist attitudes have historically driven immigration policy, ignoring the connection between immigration and human rights. Goshray 07. The focus of immigration restriction on the 19th century centered around the stated objective to keep the poor and the huddled masses out of America. Beginning with the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, implicit within these legislations was race-based discrimination. This racially asymmetric balance was captured by Harvard professor Charles Ogletree. According to Professor Charles Ogletree, implicit and explicit racial biases still pervade all four major avenues of legal immigration: family-sponsored, employment-based, diversity, and refugee. Racial biases and determining eligibility have resulted in fewer immigration visas for people of color. Race-based selective enforcement of immigrants has been the predominant norm, as seen in countless illegal raids against legal residents and harassing them for legal documents. Selective race-based confiscation of immigrants at checkpoints, unwarranted entry into these residents' homes. These practices of arbitrary and selective enforcement of federal immigration laws begin to develop a total annihilation of human rights framework within the American immigration system. U.S. policies of race-based profiling have not only restricted to law enforcement officers in charge of federal immigration laws, but they have also developed into a predominant pattern among consular officials. In Olson versus Albright, clear consular instruction states Filipinos and Nigerians have high fraud rates, and their applications should be viewed with extreme suspicion, while British and Japanese citizens rarely overstay and generally require less scrutiny. Contention 2. Refugees enforce sovereignty of nations. Subpoint A. Let us revisit the resolution. This House believes that the borders of nation states should not prevent the movement of refugees. Like I said earlier, refugees are people that are in the process of fleeing and running from oppression, meaning that they currently do not reside within a country. Borders function to uphold the legitimacy of a nation state, and we uphold the legitimacy of a country by allowing stateless persons, such as refugees, the ability to join and take part in the process of that country. The entire purpose of a country or a nation system in the first place is to form a collective. The way in which we form a collective through society is which throughout society is formed is by an aggregation of those who currently do not reside within a collective. By taking in refugees, we only reinforce the legitimacy of the state's control and sovereignty and build up the collective that makes up the state. Subpoint B, the resolution only talks about the movement of refugees, which might be inclusive to refugees joining nations' populations. However, that does not mean that all refugees will join the nation which they move or travel through. The entire reason why people are still refugees is because they cannot travel or become a part of a country in the first place. By restricting the movement of refugees, the opposition world cannot and will not solve for the root causes of refugees and cannot solve for the oppression that follows them everywhere, because after all, refugees can't go anywhere under the opposition world. They are trapped and will remain trapped until this House recognizes that the movement of refugees. Thank you.